All right, guys. Okay, so today, I'm gonna talk about how I coincide the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche and the philosophy of Philip Mainlander. So now you see, Mainlander is he's kind of a not well-known philosopher. But those that know him by his final act, which was uh, self-deleting himself, right? He opted out, right? Exited. Once he finished writing his book, he had his book. This is his final work, and he, hanged it up. Um, Now, people say that he took his philosophy to the extreme because his philosophy was pretty much that God deleted itself by splitting himself into many things. So God was one, it, you know, annihilated itself, and from that was the universe was born. And that's the ultimate, um, pretty much nirvana, heaven, whatever you want to call it, the reunion with this oneness is to pretty much achieve complete and total annihilation, and that everything is driving in that direction. Everything is going towards the direction of complete and total annihilation. Now, my particular philosophy is a little bit different than this. I believe that this God, um, it's difficult to explain. So, okay, I believe that this not an entity, but this void state split itself, but it was not technically conscious or aware of it. Um, what I think, from a mystical perspective, what I would say would be that this entity was unconscious, unaware, complete and total void. And within it, there was this uh, infinite potential. Now, this infinite potential, in a moment, I would. It's difficult for me to say this because I'm not 100% sure, but this is kind of where I arrive at. In this split of a second, it became aware and it wanted to know itself. So it divided itself so that there was other things because you can't know yourself in a vacuum. You can only know yourself relevant in relevant to other things. So I can say that I am kind, but in a vacuum there's no such thing as kind because there's nothing to be kind to. So kindness just ceases to exist and meanness or cruelness ceases to exist. But in a world where there's many people and some people are relatively kind, some people are relatively cruel, I can say I am more kind than cruel. And relatively, I am a kind person because I've seen other people be cruel. I simply don't have that characteristic. So, relatively speaking, right? So, God wanted to know itself and it split itself. Now, the thing is that the kind and the cruel are both aspects or manifestations of this God. Now, here's the thing. Ultimately, we are in the trajectory of annihilation. We are marching towards our deaths, and if there is an afterlife, I assume something happens there also. There has to be some sort of end simply because of entropy. At some point, things decay and transform into other things, and so on. Now, here's the thing. Let's say Mainlander is right, or let's say that my interpretation is right. Regardless, we're marching towards our death. Now, the thing is, I feel there's an element of truth here, but this doesn't necessarily tell us how to live at the moment. Whether you feel you're here against your will, or if you are totally stoked to be here, man, right? Whatever it is, bro, the point is we are here. Now, when we look at Mainlander's life, he was actually pretty ethical person, and he was very um, kind, because what happens is he believed that we were marching towards our annihilation, because once we're annihilated, there is no more suffering. And if nothing exists, there is zero suffering in the universe. So he didn't postulate that self deletion was the answer. And he didn't state that, you know, um, that things didn't matter. It wasn't nihilism. It was more of the ultimate goal is annihilation because of the annihilation of suffering. Therefore, while I'm here, I should do my best to alleviate suffering. So, from this perspective, I agree with him very, very much. We should be doing what we can to alleviate and minimize suffering, especially unnecessary suffering. Because unnecessary suffering is the type of suffering that simply doesn't give you anything. Now, suffering in general can be a catalyst for evolution and change and growth, but unnecessary suffering is the type of suffering that doesn't produce any growth or change. For instance, you might have a very hard situation come across, and through perseverance and uh, determination, you overcome that situation and you evolve and grow and become better than who you were before. And when we look at that, there's some serious Saturnian energy around that, where there's a limitation, and through determination, you overcome that limitation, and because of that, you are now better than before. But when a 4 year old child is sick with cancer, and after a year of battle, he dies, there was no growth, or there's nothing gotten from that. And some people might try to, you know, sauce it up and be like, well, maybe the change was meant for the parents, and they went through this hard thing, but it made it no, it doesn't make them better. Having your kid die from cancer doesn't make you a better person. You might do some better things, like you might be more kind, and you might want to be involved in helping other families with kids with cancer and so on, and some good might come out of it, but ultimately that child didn't need to suffer that in order to make that happen. So there are unnecessary suffering. There is unnecessary suffering that if we can alleviate or minimize, we should. And there are forms of suffering that are just inherent with being alive. And even though we try to alleviate it, we simply won't be able to get rid of it entirely. But that's part of the reason why I say minimize. And the thing is, we should never allow suffering to persist simply because some good may come out of it, or some sort of growth or evolution should come out of it. Because the reality is that there is plentiful suffering to go around. There's no point of producing more suffering or maintaining suffering as if this is a good thing. What we should do is minimize suffering maximally, and the amount of suffering that persists simply out of the nature of existence is the suffering that causes people to change and grow and evolve. Now that we got that out of the way, so from this position, this can be true. I perceive it to be true, although my interpretation is slightly different from Mainlander's. But now that we know we are here, we will suffer. We should try to alleviate suffering. But what else? Is that all there is? That's where I transition from Mainlander's philosophy, and I go neck deep into uh, Nietzsche's philosophy. It's will to power. You see, hold on, let me get a little more comfortable. Okay, so now you see, all right, so you see, Nietzsche was talking about that this idea, put it like this: you can be kind and you can try to alleviate suffering. But this does not mean that you need to be docile. It doesn't mean, like, put it like this: some people consider themselves pacifists simply because they are completely incapable of causing harm, or you know, they're incapable of inflicting damage. And this doesn't truly mean you're a pacifist, because if you wanted to inflict damage, you still wouldn't be able to. You're just not able to do the thing, right? True pacifism is being able to destroy everything in your path and choosing not to. Nietzsche, from a Nietzsche perspective, people sometimes maim themselves, and they convince themselves that in order to be good, they can't have power because power corrupts and power is bad. But the reality is that power isn't bad. It's just that there's a lot of people that have power that use it for bad reasons. And ultimately, if you have the intention to be compassionate and kind and to alleviate suffering, then you are probably a person that should have some power. So you shouldn't bar yourself from achieving power and influence and um, obtaining wealth and material goods and so on. You should will to power. You should try to be the best version of yourself you possibly can be. You should try to obtain as much power as possibly that you possibly can, and use that power to influence the world in uh, whichever way you see fit. But in this context, we're trying to alleviate suffering, and alleviating suffering isn't the the final thing. This is something we do throughout our lives as a component of our life. But this power can also be used for many other things: for creating art, for creating literature, for being intellectual or emotional, or so on. Like, we can influence the world. We can guide the world into a direction that is more appealing to us. And pretty much you shouldn't bar yourself from having that kind of power. You should try to become influential. You should try to obtain as much power as you possibly can have, and use that power to build wealth, and use that wealth to bring other people in and uplift them and have them gain power and influence and wealth, and continue a cycle. Now, Nietzsche doesn't go into all of these things that I'm mentioning. This is just me extrapolating and adding to what he's talking about. But ultimately, what something that really speaks to me about Nietzsche is his idea of the ubermensch, which is this overman, this Superman type personality. And strangely enough, he talks about a state beyond the ubermensch that is very, very similar to Wu Wei. Wu Wei, which is found within a lot of Oriental martial arts and Taoism, and the art of doing, doing not doing. It's the art of doing without effort, where you simply do through this flow state where everything just comes naturally, like, out of you, because you're not intending to do. There's an intention, but there's no effort. It just flows. Now, this Ubermensch, the state before that, in order to achieve this Ubermensch is to achieve your maximum potential. So in order to do that, you would have to be extremely well rounded. Now, I talk a lot about mysticism, esotericism, and occultism. And a lot of us, when we travel this path, we get lost in the spirituality. And our entire life becomes meditating and magic. And we end up being poor and not influential and not doing anything with ourselves because we're too busy being spiritual. And in order to be the ubermensch, you need to realize that the whole point of this of the magic is to put yourself in a better position physically and intellectually, and to gain power and influence and all of these other things. If you're doing magic just for the sake of doing magic, you're not doing it right. Um, if you want to be the Ubermensch, then you would need to engage intellectually and become more knowledgeable on all sorts of topics. For me, it's philosophy, psychology, and sociology, because I believe these three topics encompasses the way we interact within the world. Every interaction that I have with a person is going to include these three things. And if I'm aware of all of these teachings within these three subjects, these three fields, it puts me in a position to talk to someone and to be very emotionally intelligent and also intellectually intelligent, which allows me to engage with them on a much deeper level so that I'm not always stuck in this surface level, just meandering around. How are them Yankees? And no, I don't want to do that, right? Now, the intellectual part is this one component. We also want to go into this emotional intelligence. We also want to engage spiritually with meditation and understanding these spiritual philosophies and conceptual ideas that expands our mentality and our way of thinking, our consciousness. We want to become better at our magic, specifically so we could use the magic to affect our physical world so that, we can use this magic to create wealth, to create power, to create influence, to affect regions. You live in a tough neighborhood. You can use magic to make it chill, right? You can use magic to influence people with money to invest in that neighborhood and create more businesses and make the education better and so on and so on. And you don't have to stop at magic. You can use physical means to do the same thing. You can use your power and your intellect and your influence to create a better, at least neighborhood in this context, but ultimately world. But this idea of saving the world is very vague because there's not much I can do from here to affect locations across the world. Maybe on some level, but for the most part, I have the most control over my particular corner of this neck of woods, right? And it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop just intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, artistically. You can use you can go, like, for instance, for me, I'm very enthusiastic about pen art. I like doing pen art and oil paintings, and I make music. So music is something that I really enjoy. So I make music, and it's it's something I enjoy. It's something I enjoy, and I gotta say, some of my songs are bangers. Some of them kind of feel like, like I just threw shit against the wall and hoped it sticked. But for the most part, I have a decent amount of songs that I truly believe are, you know, good, good, musically and lyrically, and that's something that I would like to engage with, right? Now, so what else is there? So intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, artistically, physically. Because you see, if you're building power and influence and you're creating and you're doing all of these things and you're presenting intellectual property, intellectual um, material that's going to affect the people that consume it, and you're doing all of these things, you're building all of these things. What good is it if you're not able to defend it, right? if you're not able to defend your freedom and the freedom of the people around you, if you're not able to defend your sovereignty, your autonomy, if you're not able to defend your right to engage um, in all of these ways, then what good is it? So the amount of time you spend fortifying and bolstering and bringing yourself up intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, artistically, you should also be spending that amount of time on your physical body. You should be doing some sort of strength training, some sort of cardio for stamina, some sort of mobility training. Maybe there's like yoga is flexibility and mobility, but there's other forms of mobility training that are more task specific, right? There's mobility training specifically for martial arts and so on, and I feel intellectually, like I'm taking me for an example, intellectually, I produce this material and when I have the ideas, everything is fluent. I sit down and I write a book on it. And my books are a lot better than my videos because I actually get to edit it. And if something doesn't sound right, I can, delete and replace and so on, right? So, like, I have my book Omniablasio, which describes the method of unbecoming and becoming, which is undoing the self, the narrative, all of these components, understanding not to be attached to certain things like permanence, understanding that truth is a construct, understanding that there is no fixed I, there is no true self, all of these types of things. This is all philosophical. It's deeply rooted within esoteric teachings that I'm not sure if it exists other places. I believe I might have developed it myself, but I'm assuming that it's present in other esoteric teachings. But I produced this. I have an entire book, mystical threads of Jewish mysticism, which is an entire book that explains Kabbalah and the Kabbalistic teachings within the Torah, the Tanakh, the Talmud, the Zohar, the Yitzhak, the Yitzhak, and so on and so on. So intellectually, that's how I engage with the world. I write books. And then artistically, like I said, I create these songs. Like I create these songs like one of my favorite songs that I've created is called "I Am That I Am." I can't necessarily sing it like this, like because I use technology to make it sound crisp and all of that. But it pretty much says, "As within, so without." I mean, "As within, so without." As above, so below, and beyond. I imagine, causing change according to will. That is magic. Summon the genius. Angels and demons. Authorities given from I to self, from unmanifested to manifestation. All is God, God is one. Um, Only one soul, we are the fragment. A piece of infinity is still infinity. This is the divine comedy, and it's tragic. Rejoice and mourn, order and chaos, peace and havoc. From Kethet to Malkuth, from void to light, from light to matter. I am the sun and its radiant light, and the heat that emanates from it, and the sensation that you feel when it graces your brow. I am the river and the mountain it crosses and the ocean it races to beat. I am the path and the feet that walk it. I am the path and the feet that walk it. I am the beginning and end and everything in between and beyond. I am that I am. Now, I'm just saying it, right? But the actual song is set to a folks blues melody, and I think it sounds pretty good. It's called "I Am That I Am." I Am That I Am folk blues. It's on Spotify. It's on YouTube. I think I might have put it on YouTube. or maybe, DistroKid would have put it on YouTube for me. I'm not sure. But the point is, these types of lyrics mean something to me, right? This is how I engage artistically. And when I want to draw and paint, this is another thing that I like to do to engage with the world. I like to produce art and express it and show it to people. And then when it comes to physically, I'm trying to be just as proactive as I am intellectually, emotionally, because I have friends and people that talk to me, and when they need someone to talk to, I seem to be like a, a person that's beneficial to talk to. I don't want to toot my own horn. I don't want to pretend like I'm the best person to talk to. Personally, I don't think that I'm that great at helping, but from their experience, they tell me that what I say actually helps them a lot. So I'm just taking what they've told me, right? So, because when they have a situation, I'm able to dissect that situation philosophically and psychologically and tell them, you're probably feeling like this because of this reason, or so on and so on. And sometimes, like for instance, I had a cousin of mine, and she was going through this breakup and so on. And we were talking for months because this was a very long and dragged out situation. And then eventually she was like, very upset. And she was telling me, like, I don't know, like, I don't understand because I think this person loves me, but why is he treating me this way if he loves me, and so on and so on and so on. And she's going downhill in this way. And I tell her, look, it doesn't matter whether he loves you or not. The point is that he's not able to love you the way you need to be loved. And apparently, this was like, light bulb went off in her head when she heard that. Now, from my perspective, I feel like this is just obvious, but from her perspective, she didn't come to see that prior me saying it. So my intellectual and artistic and all of these things allow me to be intelligent, emotionally intelligent, to a state that allows me to produce these types of, meaningful blah, like words that apparently help and teach, right? So why wouldn't I do something similar with my body? So what I did, I started doing powerlifting. I worked my ass off, and in 6 months, I was able to take my deadlift from 320 pounds to 450 pounds, right? And I was able to take my bench press for a 1 rep max. I was only able to run 1 rep max 180 pounds. I was doing like 160 pounds for a couple of reps. And in 6 months, now my 1 rep max is 270. And right now I am ramping up so that I can hit my first 300, right? And then I also I do, and I could probably do it a lot quicker, but I'm not putting as much time as I should. I'm working out only about 2 to 3 hours twice a week. If I would add a third day, I could probably make a lot more gains. But and I probably don't look it because the camera the camera kind of makes me look small, but I'm decently sized, right? um um and then there I have I do my little yoga, 30 minutes maybe 3 times a week, just to keep a little limber, try to get my shoulders. I'm trying to get my shoulders to touch. I don't want to get so big that I can't wipe my ass, so I'm trying to make sure that I have a lot of mobility. So I'm doing a lot of joint mobility, not just to be flexible, but to strengthen the muscles, that the rotator muscles in all of my joints, and stretch them out so that I have like more mobility than usual, right? And then, I also do my martial arts like 3 times a week, go to the park, have my shin guards, my gloves, find some sort of metal pole or something that I can hit, and I just chop it up, throw combinations, throw a whole bunch of kicks, do that for like 30 minutes straight. It's great for cardio, gets your heart pumping, and I'm practicing technique in my striking. It's quite difficult to do um, grappling because I need someone to practice with to do grappling. I can't grapple the air. So, whatever. But the point is, like I said, it might sound like I'm, glocking my own dick right now, but the point is that if I want to be the ubermensch, then I need to be well rounded. I need to be at my physical peak, my intellectual peak, my emotional peak, my spiritual peak, my artistic peak. I need to be constantly trying to become better than who I was before. And with my ideas around deconstructing the self, whenever I find components of the self that are limiting me or that simply are obsolete at this point because I've transcended it, like there's things that people care, like when you feel like oh, like I feel like I'm not worthy of this and that, and and blah blah blah. Like I don't give a shit about none of that. Like I mean, if you feel that way, I'll care. I'll talk to you. I'll try to help you through it. But from my point of view, for me, I don't care at all. If I feel worthy, I'm like awesome, fuck, whatever. Like I just don't care. I just do not care. Right? Like worthiness doesn't do anything for me. Like if 100 people told me I was worthy, unless they're like consuming my content and I'm getting paid, it literally does nothing for me. Now, if I did something that truly affected your life, and that's why you're telling me I'm worthy, like look, oh, like this actually helped my life, then I don't feel anything about you telling me I'm worthy. I'm just happy that what I produced made a difference in your life and it affected you in a positive way. I'm more interested in the fact that it helped you. I'm not interested in the glory. I'm not interested in being praised. It does nothing for me, right? Now, if I get paid, that's awesome because I can use that to pay bills, and that means I can increase the amount of protein I take, and I could put on that extra 15 pounds of muscle that I want to put on. So, getting money is always a good thing. So don't let me not liking praise stop you from liking the video. You know what I'm saying? Because ultimately, more people that like my stuff, more views, more likes, more this, more that. I can actually make some money off of this, and I'm always gonna be down for that, right? But the point is, if you want to be the Ubermensch, um, you're gonna have to be well rounded. You're going to have to start taking care of your body, eating right, sleeping, working out. You need to get stronger. You need to get bigger. You need to be functional. That strength and speed and flexibility needs to be functional. And the best way to figure out how functional you are is to do martial arts. So not only are you doing more cardio and doing more agility training and mobility training and moving around, but you're also learning how to defend yourself, defend your family, and so on. And martial arts doesn't stop at hand-to-hand combat. I have multiple swords over there. Like I'm decent with a katana. I'm decent with a long sword. I'm decent with a what's it called, daggers and stuff like that. And a bow and arrow. I'm not the best, but I can make it work. Crossbow, bow and arrow, blah blah blah. The only thing that I'm missing is firearms, and that's just because my state doesn't allow it. So you know what I'm saying. There's nothing I can do about that. But if I ever get to go upstate or like to another state where I'm able to go to a firing range, I'm definitely gonna add that to the repertoire. And obviously, it doesn't stop there. You can't be a meathead, and you can't be a complete meathead, and you can't be a complete nerd, or you can't be a complete emotional guy. You have to find the middle ground between all of it. You have to be a buff nerd that's super smart when it comes to emotional shit, and you also happen to be very spiritual. And when you have all of those components together, now you are a well-rounded individual that has all the components made to be the ubermensch. And now you just have to continue escalating. And once you feel like you've achieved that ubermensch, the real kicker, the real difference maker, is going to be when you enter that space where you go into flow state and you can simply make things happen with minimal effort. right? So if you're fighting and you go into flow state and you got all of these combos coming out at super speed and you feel like you're doing nothing, your breathing isn't even, you're not even panting or anything, you're reaching flow state. And that flow state can be found when you're lifting, when you're fighting, when you're painting, when you're producing music, blah blah blah. So yeah. So ultimately, I've been talking for a long time, so I'm going to stop this right here. Ultimately, Mainlander has his point. We are all marching towards our death and our annihilation. But let's not mind that. Right now, we are here, so we might as well will to power. We might as well obtain wealth, obtain power, obtain influence, be able to use that to affect our lives and the lives of the of other people around us, always intending to do perform actions that are beneficial for ourselves and others, and always, and when it comes to ethics, simply my form of ethics is quite simple. It's only three components: maintain freedom for yourself and others, reduce suffering for yourself and others, and increase pleasure for yourself and others. This will exist on some sort of sliding scale, because too much freedom means more suffering. Reducing too much suffering means not enough freedom. So we need to find the balance, right? But ultimately, if you're trying your hardest to be a well-rounded individual that is both mentally, physically, spiritually strong, and you're focusing part of that energy on reducing suffering within the world, you're ultimately the ubermensch. And even though we're marching towards our death and our annihilation, this means something for the moment. And it's transitory. It's not permanent. It's not going to be stable forever, but we have the ability to do that right now, so we should. And at the end of the day, all you can really do is live like you'll never die and die like you never lived, And that's where I'm going to leave it, guys. All right, peace out. Remember to like, remember to subscribe, and leave some comments. Let me know what y'all think about what I'm talking about here.